Hello everyone, you're all here for HebrewInIsrael.net, and it's been a very exciting week, and a lot of interesting things have happened, and one of the very interesting things that's come up are the Olympics, and everyone's excited and watching the Olympics and everything. However, in the background, there have been several discussions about the Olympics, which are actually connected to the previous video I put out about pagan obsession. Since that video has received, actually, for me at least, on what I do, on my level, quite a bit of attention, and people were sharing around. So first of all, thank you for doing that. And thank you for sharing, watching, and so on. And don't forget to comment. But the comments up to now from what people have shown me were amazing, and I just want to say thank you. Now, the thing that, as a follow-up to this subject, the Olympics came up, and there have been people in different walks of faith been discussing the whole thing about the Olympics, and obviously it connects to the whole issue of paganism, because anyone who's ever studied ancient Greece knows that the Olympics were the big games that the Greeks had, though there were several games that they had, and the Olympics were the big one. They were done at basically the foot of Mount Olympus, and that's why they're called Olympics, because of the Olympic games of yore. In any case, the question I was actually raised, and this was sent to me via email by one of my friends, is can we actually consider the Olympics as something pagan? Now, I think this is actually a very legitimate question, because as I just stated, the Olympics do stem from a pagan practice where they actually did honor the pagan gods, and the games were done under the flag of these different pagan gods. So first of all, yes, the original Olympics were considered to be something pagan, and sports in general, especially if they came from the Aegean world, were considered something that was part of people's religion. Now, it's very important to point out that there was no actual separation in the ancient world between religion and state and basically everything that you did. Essentially, secularism is, I wouldn't say completely new, but is a relatively new principle, especially from the point when people started questioning the church and questioning faith in general. So really, it really started about 200-300 years ago, though there were people that we know, like, for example, maybe Leonardo da Vinci, for example, that might have been secular. We do hear about certain people that were, anti-religious, and different other names that we find in different sources, especially Jewish sources that try to give you a specific name to each type of heresy. But in any case, the point is that back then, there was no actual separation between religion, state, people's personal life, and so on, and names of gods were something that people mentioned quite frequently. Now, the thing is that the question that stems from here, are the Olympic Games actually something that is connected to what they did back then? And the answer is yes and no, and this is why I'm going to be very careful how I word this. The principle of the Olympic Games in the ancient world was to bring all the different Aegean cities, or all the different Greek cities, if they were from the different areas of Greece, to one place where they put down their disputes and basically played. And this represented the unity of the different Greek cities. Now, obviously, the Greeks also were very big on the issue of separating from one another, allowing each city to be its own sovereignty. But then on the other hand, they also put everything down for unity when it was necessary. For example, the Persian Wars, which eventually did become a bit of a mess, especially when people started siding with different sides. But that's not the point. The point is that they did have this symbol of unity. Now, the Olympic Games today obviously were started many, many years after the last Olympic Games of the Aegean world, and we don't really hear much of anything of that area until basically I think it was at the beginning of the 20th century, if I'm not mistaken, they began. Not a big expert on Olympic Games, don't really watch it. I used to watch the Olympic lift because I personally am in the weightlifting world and do strongman training. So for me, it is interesting, but it's not that interesting. But really, to the point, the question that's raised is, what we have today, is it really the same thing? And the answer is, as I said, yes and no. The idea of the games is the same. Bringing all mankind, this time it's not limited just to the Aegean world, but bringing all mankind, all nations together to one place to play friendly games and then go back to their business after the games are over. Basically, it's like presumably a truce for a while, and then you go back to regular life. So that's the same idea. But on the other hand, there is really no pagan, or at least today, there are no pagan symbols. I mean, if you look at some of the early Olympics, especially if you take the Nazi Olympics of Nazi Germany, where the Nazis actually had a very big thing about symbols and ancient world and, pagan symbols and kind of imitating the world prior to Christianity, then the answer would be yes. But anyone's been following the Olympics for the last 20, 30 years, the notion is kind of dropping more and more, and they're trying to make it more secular. They used to, for example, put a ring of leaves on the tops of people's heads, and it doesn't exist anymore. So there is this element of removing certain things. So this is why it's like an in-between situation. On the one hand, yes, there are pagan principles or things that originate from the pagan world, but then on the other hand, it is completely secular today, and really no one does anything religious these days in those things. So this is where the problem begins. As I stated, in the ancient world, there was no separation between religion, state, and so on. And actually, the Olympic Games were state-sanctioned. Actually, a lot of the cultural things in the Greek world were state-sanctioned. Actually, there were people who were patrons, and the government had to pay for these things. There were even people who donated money to enable people to go into the theaters. They would give them donations just so people can show up to see the performances and so on. So really, the problem that we have here is that things from the past are being continued into the present, but they've completely changed. So my response to this is as follows. The origins are pagan, completely. There's no question about it. However, even in the Greek world, there was a certain issue here of just politics as well. So it wasn't just completely religious. But then on the other hand, politics and religion were connected at the time. I think politics and religion is still connected to this very day. However, today, the latter version of the Olympic Games is no longer of the same nature. So my responses as people of faith would be, let it be. Don't over-criticize it, but, just don't make too much of a fuss out of it. If your country takes a medal, hurrah, but let's not make too much of a big deal out of it. It's really a way for countries to also kind of put themselves out there and so on. So today it's really mostly secular, and I wouldn't be too concerned about saying it's completely pagan. However, yes, the origins are pagan, and I am personally a little iffy about it. But to criticize anyone who follows it, I think it's a very gray area, and therefore I don't think that we need to make too much of a fuss out of it, but then on the other hand, not criticize others who do, because it just is. It's a reality of something more secular than what it used to be. So I hope this gives some kind of a direction. I really am a little, hesitant about this one because it does have a clear pagan origin, but then on the other hand, it is different today. And many things in our lives today are actually based on things that exist in the ancient world, and they're more entwined in people's religions. So it's very difficult to answer such questions. And this is why I've actually personally seen rabbis who said we should put these things aside and just ignore the Olympics. But I think their reason is mostly of a criticism of Western culture, not a criticism of let's destroy it like some others say, but more a criticism of we need to focus on the more important things in life, which is God, Torah, living a moral life, and so on. So hope this gives some kind of insight. Sorry I can't give an absolute answer about this one. Each person should choose as they please. But as I said, I don't think there's any need to criticize anyone who does follow it, but I don't think we should do a big fuss out of it, especially as people that our ideal is to do Torah and do justice with one another. Kol Tov.